Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Today is the start of a new reading vlog where I am going to be finishing the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. This video is partly in honor of my friend Leanna from Leanna's Libraries' birthday. Happy birthday, Leanna. This is one of her all-time favorite series, and it's one that I've been meaning to continue with for a while, and I thought, what better birthday present than to do a reading vlog reading some of her favorite books. So, I have a box here. I slightly opened it so I know what it is, but I bought myself matching copies of the First Law trilogy. I have read the first book before. I have kind of an ugly copy, so I wanted a matching set. So I got them. So we're gonna open this baby up. All right. So we have The Blade itself, which is book one. This is the one I have already read. I think it's been at least a year since I read it. Probably longer and I've been meaning to continue on, but haven't. So I'm finally doing it. I did really enjoy this. I think I gave it 4 stars initially. It wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't as dark as I think I had been expecting. My favorite thing is Glokta. Glokta is the best character in my opinion. So I'm very excited to return to this world. So the plan for this reading vlog is to read Before They Are Hanged, which is book 2, and The Last Argument of Kings, which is book 3. And then I will have actually finished the entire First Law trilogy. That is the plan. Hopefully you guys will enjoy coming along with me. I'm probably going to need to refresh my memory a little bit because it has been so long since I read book 1, so I might actually go and watch one of Leanna's videos about the first book to kind of remember what all happened. I remember a lot of it, but I feel like it's going to take me a bit to get back into it. So I'm going to start reading Before They Are Hanged, and I will check in with you guys once I've made some progress. Hello, Bethany from later in the vlog and editing popping in here. I wanted to do a couple of things before going on with the vlog. Number one, for anybody who is not super familiar with First Law, the series, or the trilogy, I wanted to give you a little bit of background because I didn't really talk much about this and I had read the first book like a couple of years back. This is considered to be grimdark fantasy, which basically means that there is no grand quest. There is no hero's arc. Good does not win the day. Like, it's more of like a realist, or in this case, I think like subverting some of those typical fantasy tropes and journeys. And this trilogy in particular, that's really the project of it, is Abercrombie kind of subverting it. So that's kind of more what it means by grimdark. The other thing I wanted to say is you're going to hear me talk a lot in this vlog about Glokta, who I love. He is one of my favorite characters. The really fascinating thing about him, if you haven't read any of the books that you should know, is he was born handsome and wealthy and was a very talented swordsman until he went to war and got captured by the enemy and was subjected to torture for 2 years. And so now he is, you know, physically broken and oddly enough, despite having experienced torture, works as a torturer himself. He is super snarky and this like interesting blend of like do whatever it takes and then have odd offhand moments of philosophizing and wondering if it's possible for him to be a better man and then going back to torturing people. I don't know. It's like, it sounds terrible, but like, such an interesting character, such a great character. The one other thing I will say about this is this vlog is going to have spoilers in it. There is a point later in the vlog where I say spoiler warning for the scene, and I would say after that point, if you don't want to be spoiled for major things that happen, probably don't keep watching because I do get into a lot of specifics, especially with Last Argument of Kings. And the last thing I will say about this is two things happened. One is the couple of clips that I filmed while reading Before They Are Hanged, I must have deleted or something. So you get me talking about it once I've finished it. Sorry. I did a much better job trying to vlog my thoughts in the moment with the second book. So with that said, let's go on with the vlog. Hello, I apologize. I have been the worst vlogger because I finished reading before they were hanged and I haven't really done a lot of updates. Part of it is that my brother and sister-in-law were coming into town to visit, and so I was listening to this on audio while I was like cleaning the house and getting stuff done, and then I was pretty busy doing stuff around the city with them, and vlogging sort of fell by the wayside. So here we are. I have finished Before They Are Hanged, so book 1 done, and I liked it. It took me a little while to get into it. I feel like, you know, it's funny, I think I basically have very similar feelings about this book as I did about the first book in the series, and I'm like wondering if I'm gonna feel the same way about the third one as well. It took me a while to get into it. It was a little bit slow to start. I always love Glokta, so anytime Glokta is on page, I'm happy. It's great. The other characters, like, it took a while for their stories and what was happening with them to become something that I was really invested in, but eventually it was. And I think the strength of what Joe Abercrombie is doing here is really the characters and some of the larger ideas. I do think that the project of sort of subverting traditional fantasy tropes and plots and plot points is a pretty cool and interesting one. And so you get a lot of focus in here on the horrors of war and the meaninglessness of battles and war and unexpected deaths and romances that break up and go nowhere and, you know, grand quests that lead to nothing. Like, it's, you know, like, it's kind of funny, to be honest, at times. Like, at times that's kind of entertaining to me to read. That's kind of a lot of the project of the book, which I appreciate. I will say, and again, this was kind of how I felt about the first book in the series, is there's not a lot of plot. I mean, if we're being honest, like, not that much happens in terms of plot, and I do feel like with these books, I spend a good part of the first chunk of reading it being like, okay, but where is this going? Like, where are we going with this? What's happening? And I think part of that is just like what you're used to in terms of a traditional plot progression, and this doesn't really do that. And I feel like eventually I get enough into the swing of it that I'm like, okay, I just need to not expect that and just be okay that it is what it is and enjoy the characters and laugh at the things that are funny and see what happens and just kind of go along for the ride. And yeah, so I am kind of curious because I read The Blade itself so far previously from picking up Before They Are Hanged. Since I'm now going to be reading books 2 and 3 back to back, I'm curious if I'm going to be able to just kind of like slip right back into that more easily because I was used to it here, if that makes any sense. So we'll see. I will update you guys. I will attempt to do a better job of vlogging my experiences with this. There are definitely some iconic lines, and I wish that I had actually taken time to note some of them and write them down, but like there was one that I thought was great about, you know, this is not exact, so don't quote this, but something to the effect of that, like, the time for great men doing great things is past, it's a time for small men doing small things, or like it was something along those lines, and I was like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it is. I also have to say, I think Glokta is one of the best and most fascinating characters. I mean, part of it is he's snarky and funny and like his internal monologue cracks me up, but he's so interesting because he does so many really terrible things, but then he also has these like soft moments where he'll like save someone's life that he's not supposed to, or wonder, could I be a better man? And then like proceed to torture somebody in the next scene. I don't know. It really works. I think Glokta is like one of the best characters. I love him. And, you know, I will say, because I know Leanna has talked about how only Joe Abercrombie can write sex scenes that are like kind of gross. And having read this book, I now see what she's saying. Like, he writes these, there's like a couple of like a fairly explicit sex scenes, but they're just kind of like, ugh. Like, they're not sexy. They're not written in a sexy way. And it's kind of funny. So, yeah, I liked this. I didn't love it. I gave book 1 4 stars. I would probably give this one 4 stars as well. But as a whole, I'm enjoying the project and I'm really enjoying some of the characters and the things that he's doing. So, I am going to start Last Argument of Kings sometime this week, and I will check back in with you guys once I've made some progress. Bye. Good morning. Time for an update. I am reading The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie, and I am mostly listening to it on audio. The audiobook is narrated by Stephen Pacey, and it is very good. His narration is fantastic. One big thing that has stood out to me, and I think I noticed this in the last book, but especially getting into this book, is that Abercrombie writes some of the least appealing, least sexy sex scenes. like the word choices that he uses for the descriptions are like, I think it's intentional. I think it's intended to be unappealing, but I'm like, oh, it's like squelching, like, okay. Which is like funny. Like, it's not a criticism. It's just, it was, I think, particularly interesting for me because right before this, I'd finished listening to a romance in the Bridgerton series and then going to this, and just the difference in word choices describing sex scenes. I was like, okay. So that was kind of funny. But overall, I'm enjoying it. I think my theory about getting through them back to back working better was correct. I'm just kind of slipping right back into all of the characters and what's happening. And so I think for those of you interested in reading the series, I might actually recommend reading them pretty close together instead of taking a big break between books like I did. I just think the experience has been better. No surprises in terms of Glokta is my favorite. There's a lot of just like sly humor that I find entertaining. Yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I'm curious to see what happens. I was chatting with Leanna last night about it actually, and she was saying that basically her first read through of the first 2 books was a similar experience to me, where she was having a good time but didn't necessarily love everything about it. And she was saying that reading on in the series, and particularly finishing Last Argument of Kings, changes the way that you look at those earlier books once you know stuff. So I'm really curious to get to the end and see, like, what does she mean? What are the things that are going to change everything? I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see how it's going. Check back in with you guys once I have more to say. So things are getting interesting. Big twist happened. Spoilers for before they're hanged. So don't watch the rest of this clip if you don't want to be spoiled for it. But the king has died. His sons have died. They are now gathering the council together to vote on who the next king would be, when the wizard reveals that Jezal was the king's bastard, and he is getting put in position to become the next king. Very interesting, and like explains a lot of things that have happened thus far, so I'm curious to see where the rest of the book goes. But that was definitely an interesting twist, and it is one of those things where I could see knowing that when other people don't, it would be interesting to go back and read kind of what the books are doing with that in mind. So we'll see what else happens. Good morning. I am drinking some coffee, just had breakfast. So I thought I would pop in to do an update. I am not quite halfway through Last Argument of Kings, and it's definitely interesting. I think we're getting, you know, it's interesting to see like who ends up in power, right? The like West suddenly becomes the head of the military because he was friends with this guy that nobody thought was going to become king. You know, not necessarily always the most deserving people getting into power, but unexpected people still getting into power. And Glokta's in a bad situation because he's caught between 2 ruthless groups of people who want him to do opposing things. He's gonna have to figure things out. Battle scenes are interesting in this because they're definitely not romanticized. You get kind of the first person perspective of somebody in the middle of it, and just like the horror and the confusion. It's not romantic or heroic. It's also as interesting too because Logan Ninefingers is, and I wonder if we're ever going to find out why exactly, but he will sometimes go into these killing rages where he basically becomes another person and later will have no memory of what he did. And it's so fascinating because when he's not in one of these rages, he's like a pretty decent guy. But then you get his perspective where it's almost like a different person or spirit or something takes over his body, and he is just ruthless and will kill children and women and like revels in the bloody violence. And yeah, it's interesting because then he's got this reputation for being a killer, even though a lot of the time that's not like totally who he is. So that's, yeah. I don't know that I have a lot of really deep thoughts about it at this point. Maybe I will later, or maybe I will after I have a cup of coffee, but I'm enjoying it. I will say it's been interesting because I'm switching off between reading this and Shadow and Claw, which is, you know, dark, it's like a classic of dark sci fantasy. So it's kind of interesting going back and forth between the two. I would say Shadow and Claw is much more graphically brutal in some ways. Anyway, it's interesting. All right, I will check back in again at some point. So Logan, the Bloody Nine, went into this fight with a giant that seemed impossible to defeat, assuming he was going to die and not upset about it. And instead, what happens? He ends up becoming the king of the Northmen, which I think is not what he was hoping for. So, yeah, it's so interesting to me, the people who end up getting into positions of leadership and power. Yeah, it's... So we've got just like everybody getting moved into positions where they're kings or something. We'll see what happens next. Good morning. I wanted to do a little bit of an update because I just finished a pretty significant scene, and there were a couple of other things about this book that I wanted to talk about too, so we're on here. The first thing, this is not the most recent scene, but the first thing that I'm finding interesting, kind of entertaining, is how awful things have been for Giselle since he became king. He thinks everything's great. He's got this wife who is like a princess, and then in private she wants nothing to do with him. And he's having to kind of like figure out like what to do and who to be, even though like he's always just let other people think for him. But then he's turning out to not be as easily controlled as Baez might have wished he would be. Which, you know, you put a crown on somebody, like you don't know for sure what they're gonna do. So that whole like kind of subplot's been interesting. The scene that I just read is where Baez and Pharaoh and other character whose name I don't recall went into the Maker's house for the second time. Pharaoh found the seed. It was revealed that the assistant was actually being possessed by the ghost of the Maker's daughter, who we discover Baez actually killed centuries ago, and he'd been lying about things. But Pharaoh doesn't care because she just wants revenge. It's just interesting. It's like, you know, you have like the old wise wizard who's sort of the Gandalf stand-in, right? Who has not made great choices and is maybe more of a villain than a hero. It's a lot of like, I mean, the whole story, right, is like subverting your typical fantasy tropes, and so I'm finding it interesting. I will check back in either once something major happens or when I finished the book. Hello, I finally finished reading The Last Argument of Kings. Wow. Like, so much goes down in the last like 150 pages of this book. It is quite the page turner at that point, which is funny because like I think through the middle of this I was definitely like slogging a bit. I feel like the pacing through the middle is kind of like okay, and then the last 150 pages, like, you get so many revelations, so many things happen, pieces fit together. And now I definitely see also what Leanna was saying in terms of like, oh yeah, this changes everything, and like how you would read earlier books, which is also interesting. It's a really interesting ending. Like, there's so much to talk about. I mean, basically, at this point, like, it's spoilers. I'm gonna have to do like a spoiler warning thing earlier in the vlog. That's fine. But like, basically, we now know that Baez planned everything. He is the puppet master, and like, what's awful is there's this huge sort of battle where thousands of people died and there was destruction of the city, and for what? Like for Baez to get what he wanted and like kill some of his enemies, like for his own benefit. Like he just doesn't really care about people anymore. And it's pretty awful. And then he like convinces Glokta to work for him, and like it's funny because I feel like in some ways Glokta gets the happiest ending. I don't know why, like maybe because he is so ruthless and brutal, because he ends up married to Artie, and you know, she's actually nice to him, and like he's continuing to do awful things, but it's like this whole thing of like people don't get what they deserve, which I guess is like the whole message of the book. People don't get what they deserve. Oh, it's very interesting, man. I feel like I'm still kind of processing everything that happened. And then we still don't know if Logan is dead or not. He's probably not dead. I mean, he fell out a window down a cliff to a river. He's probably still alive and going to show up again in the future. Baez is off doing things, but still pulling strings behind the scenes. Money is kind of at the root of everything, which I think is interesting. If you go with the thing of like money is the root of all evil, certainly is here, right? Like it's the root of what's driven everything that's happened. It is interesting, like all the revelations that you get. It's like one after another, a lot of revelations. And and then we find out that the queen is gay and having a relationship with one of her ladies in waiting, which Glokta, because he's Glokta, figures out and then threatens her lover if she doesn't start sleeping with the king and having heirs. So, like, that is the world we are living in here. Yeah, a lot went on. So, how do I feel about this? I don't know. Like, I don't feel like I can give it 5 stars because my experience through some of the middle of it was just like very draggy. I do think I like it better than the other 2 books, and I gave both of those 4. So this is like a 4.5 maybe, like somewhere in that realm. And I like what the series is doing as a whole. So I'm glad that I'm reading these. Let me get the other book, and maybe I'll move to a different angle, and we'll wrap this baby up, because tomorrow's Lana's birthday, and I want to get this up on her birthday. Okay, here we go. In case you're wondering, it is almost midnight, so I like barely squeaked in finishing the book the day I wanted to. So we read Before They Were Hanged. Apologies again. I think I actually did at one point have clips for earlier with this, but they must have gotten deleted, so you literally just got my wrap up with this. Like that's it. But I liked it. 4 stars. It was interesting. Again, I love Glokta. Glokta's the best. Favorite character. What else is new? This I think I liked a little bit better, partly because there was just like so many things that got tied up in the last 150 pages or so. And I am kind of curious to see like if you can tell that it was all planned from the beginning. I am guessing you can, because of the way Leanna raves about it and says that she likes it better the more she rereads the series. Which, I mean, is pretty masterful, I've got to say. If all of this was planned from the beginning and all of those things were woven in and you don't even notice until you finished it, like, that's pretty impressive. So I am happy that I have finally finished this trilogy. I do want to continue on reading in this world. I know Best Served Cold comes next, so at some point, perhaps I will continue on, but I think I need a little bit of a break. Yeah, I think this was interesting. If you don't already follow Leanna, go check her out, especially if you're an Abercrombie fan. I feel like if you are, you probably already know who she is, so, you know. But happy birthday, Leanna. Hope you enjoyed the vlog. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts or feelings on anything I talked about in this video. And for question of the day, tell me about one of your favorite evil characters. Because Glockshot is not good, but he knows who he is, you know? And there's no falseness towards himself. And he's funny and snarky as hell. And I don't know, I love him. So let me know, do you have an evil or morally gray character that you love? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more, and if you would like to support the work of the channel and feel so inclined, check out the Patreon, link down below, or check out channel memberships. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.